Welcome to the Billion Insights podcast. I'm your host, Sri. Today we have an incredible guest joining us all the way from America. His name is Mccoy. He's an entrepreneur, business and brand development expert, author. His impressive career includes founding a MVNO telecommunication company, which he later sold, and he also owns a news magazine company, which he acquired in 2018. He has an inspiring story of resilience. He was once told by his doctor that he only had some months to live due to the brain cancer, but he has fought against all odds to recover and come out as a fighter. He's now dedicated most of his time to helping thousands of people reach their goals through mentoring, speaking, and through his successful books, podcasts, where he encourages other entrepreneurs to achieve success in their own lives. We are thrilled to have him on the show to share his incredible journey and valuable insights. So without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Curtis. So hello, Mr. Curtis. Welcome to the Billion Insight podcast.
Thank you so much, Sri. Man, I appreciate you having me as a guest on the show tonight.
Thank you, sir. It is our pleasure to have you here in our show.
How did you get started with podcasting? I don't mean to, I know you're asking the questions, but I'm excited to just get to know you a little bit better.
To sum up your question, you are saying that what kind of question I will ask, right? Do you?
No, yeah. I was asking you what made you interested in connecting with people and interviewing them on your podcast.
Oh, okay. My bad. So for a long time, I wanted to be a podcaster. Why I become a podcaster is that I think I love having one-on-one conversation with people. So I believe that through the right questions, it's possible to extract and deliver valuable insights to people who seek knowledge, So I want to give our listeners as much insights as possible through the stories of people around the world who have something to share about themselves, their countries, their experiences, or who have achieved and overcome something in their life, just like you. So that's my goal through the podcast.
I love that.
Thank you. So, Mr. Curtis, so can we start from the beginning? Let's start with your childhood.
Sounds good.
So you were born and raised in America, right?
Yeah, I was born in Colorado, small town. And I've never lived outside of America. I've traveled outside of the U.S. a lot, but looking forward to traveling to. You're in India, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I've got a great employee that lives in India. Really looking forward to getting over there and meeting him someday.
Great. So, Mr. Curtis, if I'm not mistaken, you are in your 40s, right?
Yes, sir. I am just recently turned 42.
So you grew up in 80s America, right?
Yep.
So what was it like growing up in America in 80s for you?
Man, stuff was so much different back then. It's I grew up in a small town, kind of a country. You worked hard. You worked on a farm, had raised horses and mules, and just a whole different thing that kids are dealing with now. We didn't have all the craziness that's going on. Kids now with all this gender identity and just a bunch of stuff we never even had to worry about as kids. I think it's probably a simpler life back then.
So, sir.
How old are you?
Yeah, I was born and raised in India. I come from a state located in Southeast India called Odisha.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So, Mr. Curtis, can you tell us about your background and how you become interested in entrepreneurship?
Like a lot of entrepreneurs, I started just from a young age in school. I don't know, probably 13 years old, I think, was when I started selling stuff in school and just trying to figure out ways to make money. Everything from your typical, just selling little inventions or whatever kind of junk. But I've always kind of been an entrepreneur at heart, I think. And I learned over the years, I started my first business at 13 years old. I got to stay with my grandma one summer, and I went and bought a used lawnmower at a yard sale and tied it to the back of my bicycle, and I pedaled it home to her house. She's going, what are you going to do with the lawnmower? But I printed up little flyers that had my name and my grandma's phone number on it and something about lawn mowing services. And I made more money. There was days, it was kind of in a retirement community where my grandma lived. And I just go around knocking on doors. And I figured out at that age, the harder you worked, if I'd go knock on a door, they'd ask me, well, how much is it to mow my lawn? And I'd tell them Well, I'll work all day for you. I'll work as hard as I can. And at the end of the day, you pay me what you think that is worth. So
Hmm.
these older folks, they're in their 60s, 70s, retired people, 60s, 70s, 80s, and I'd work for them all day. And sometimes they were tipping me hundreds of dollars as a young kid. So I made a killing doing that. And then I realized as I got older, started getting jobs working for other people. I
Mhm.
wanted to work for myself, and I knew there was more possibility. There was no cap on my income. Whereas if I worked for another man, another person doing a job, I was always going to be capped at what they were willing to pay me.
Hmm.
So I've kind of
That's
always
in,
been an entrepreneur.
that's interesting. So coming to today, how does your typical day usually look?
So I'll tell you tomorrow, I'll get up early. I've got 4 podcast guest episodes that I'll be on, kind of
Hmm.
like your show here. And then my main business, I do personal branding for entrepreneurs, authors, motivational speakers, podcast hosts, people who
Hmm.
are already doing great, crushing it in life and business. And I help them become known and exposed on a larger stage. So, for
Hmm.
example, we advertise on the 96-foot billboard in Times Square, New York.
Hmm.
People put people on put their magazine covers out there. But so most of my days are spent. I love being a guest on these podcasts because it's a way to access other audiences and get connected with people that I don't already know. So tomorrow I've got 4 separate podcast interviews and then interviewing somebody on Amazon Fire TV and doing an interview for Newswire Magazine. But every single day is different. I haven't had a job where I worked for another man in years and years. So every single day is different.
Hmm. So 4 podcasts in a single day. That's great. How are you able to manage this, Mr. Cortez? That's really impressive, I would say.
Yeah, so I'm not hosting the podcasts. You have
Yeah.
a whole lot more work as a podcast host than I do as a guest. I
Hmm.
show up, just have a good conversation with people, hopefully
Hmm.
make a new friend with every episode.
Yep.
But as a guest, I love it because I hosted a podcast for a few years, and on those, as you know, you've got a ton of work to edit the audio, cut
Yep.
out ums, ahs, weird gaps, weird things that shouldn't have been said.
Hmm.
If you're doing video, it's an additional step of editing.
Yep.
But as a guest, if I show up, just have meaningful, interesting conversations, then I
Hmm.
get access to everybody else's audience without actually having to do the work of the editing like the podcast host does. So I sure appreciate you having me on as a guest because
Yep.
that's huge. It's really a cool thing that you're connecting me
Yep.
and doing
Thank
this.
you. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Curtis. So coming to your business, what inspired you to start your first business? And can you tell us about that?
Well, that first ever, I mean, it wasn't really a business, but
Mhm.
mowing lawns as a little kid. Like I
Yep.
said, I think I was about 13 years old with a used lawnmower from a yard sale
Yep.
and started making money. And I figured out I could make a whole lot more money than the other kids who were getting an allowance, for
Mhm.
sitting around the house and cleaning up or whatever they're supposed to be doing.
Mhm.
I'm not sure if an allowance is common in India, but a lot of kids in the U.S. get an
Mhm.
allowance, basically just get paid for existing.
I don't
Yeah, and
think it
over the
is
years,
really
I've
common here in India, but I can understand. Okay, that was your first business. So let's move on to your telecommunication company. So can we discuss about the MVNO telecommunication company which you founded? Before that, can you explain what a MVNO mobile virtual network operator is and how it is different from the traditional mobile carriers?
Yeah, that's a great question. I am not involved in the mobile virtual network operator space anymore. I don't do anything with telecommunications now. But
Mhm.
I owned 3 retail stores and we had licensees all over the United States selling our service. So basically, I'm not sure how that works in India as far as the MVNOs go, but
Mhm.
in the United States, there's Boost Mobile, there's Cricket, there's Metro PCS, a lot of these kind of companies. And
Mhm.
as an MVNO, you sign a massive contract. For example, to
Mhm.
sign up, the application fee with Sprint was $50,000, 50,000 USD. So that's more money than a lot of people make in a year. And we had to sign up with 4 separate carriers: Sprint, Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile, and then
Mhm.
build our own company. So basically, you're buying talk, text, and mobile data at wholesale, and then building plans. So we'd get charged for every megabyte of data that somebody used, every minute of talk, every text message sent.
Mhm.
So it's almost MVNO is a very dangerous business because it's a huge gamble.
Mhm.
Say, for example, if I'm selling a $15 cell phone plan,
Mhm.
or say you're offering an unlimited plan, I'm charging $60 a month.
Mhm.
We had customers on our $60 plan that used close to $300 per month of service meaning I lost $240 every month that I was paying for that customer's phone bill. But the goal with that was, by the service, you build the plans where the average monthly monthly usage across all plans, where you're in the black making a profit on those. But it's a good business to not be involved in anymore. I love that I'm not having to mess with the cell phone industry.
It is kind of a gambling, as you said.
It was huge gambling. I mean, it was a huge gamble every month.
Yeah.
And there was problems, for example, like during Super Bowl season, or you could tell at different times of the day when all of the kids get out of school. So at 3 p.m., 3:30 p.m., your mobile data usage would go through the roof. And so I'd be losing money for, you say, from 3 p.m. until 10 o'clock at night. And then overnight profitability is high because not many people are using the phone at that time. If in bigger cities, when you could get people connected to Wi-Fi, now you're not paying for mobile data usage on the Wi-Fi minutes. I mean, on the Wi-Fi megabytes spent. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's a business that I haven't been involved in for a couple of years. We shut down our last retail store in 2022, but now my business is the personal branding. I bought Newswire Magazine, bought Newswire in 2018, so that's what I'm focusing on now. But if you are looking at starting an MVNO, I would recommend don't.
Just to understand what MVNO is, because we Indian, we are not familiar with MVNO. So how it is different compared to the traditional carrier? What the additional benefit consumer will get through MVNO compared to the regular carrier?
So with a carrier, typical like Sprint, Verizon, AT&T, Sprint is out of business in the United States now. They've merged with T-Mobile. But to own, let's say if you're going to start your own Verizon, you're going to need hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to set up cell phone towers all across the United States or all across India, wherever you're at. You'd have to put up towers in all these different places. As a mobile virtual network operator, Virgin Mobile used to be active in India, I believe. That was an MVNO that ran off of Sprint. So they run off of Sprint towers in the US. They would lease basically you're not having to have all the output where you're buying, you're basically just paying for the usage rather than having to build out the infrastructure. But it's still massive. We paid, like I said, $50,000 license fee for each of the carriers to get set up with.
It is like you are act as a mediator. You are buying the underlying technologies from a big company and selling it with your branding, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of infrastructure that goes in the middle, a lot of build out, and it's something there's not many people ever that are individual mom and pop type of stores that do it, because you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars to outgo with zero income for years as you're getting the network built up. So like I said, it's a huge risk, but you can make good money.
Yep. Okay, so if I understand it correctly, for an analogy, let's say I want to start my own cloud service. Let's say Sri Cloud Service. So instead of starting from scratch to set up a cloud infrastructure, which would cost you like billions of dollars to set up a proper functioning global cloud service. So what would I do is I would buy the cloud space from, let's say, Microsoft Azure or Google Cloud or AWS. AWS. And then I would package it and sell it as a Sri Cloud service. So we can say it is similar to that, right? Similar to the MVNO.
Well, and the way that I used to explain it, like I said, I'm not involved in MVNOs at all. I'm not looking to brand myself as an expert in MVNOs. That I'm trying to stay away from that business. But yeah, it's basically you're just buying and reselling service. You could do the same thing if you were buying apples or buying, some type of fruit from a local retailer. You're buying bananas from the farmer, and then you're buying them at wholesale. So you say, okay, I agree to spend 10 million rupees a month or whatever on buying these, and then hoping that you can sell them at a profit.
Yep. Okay. You just mentioned that you bought a news magazine company, Newswire Magazine, in 2018. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so that was a huge thing there. When we owned the retail stores, I had employees working for me. We had a couple dozen employees across the United States, as well as India. I've still got one of my employees from India. His name's Susanthar, just a really sharp guy. But I had an employee at the time. We were massively profitable one year and had a huge tax liability. So we had to have some sort of write-off in order to lose money. You either spend money on another investment or you pay it to the United States government in taxes. So one of my employees was a real sharp guy, always looking at technology. he said, hey, Newswire is for sale. It was a press release distribution company founded in 1997. And it was basically helping people build their personal brands. At the time, we were spending a lot of money with other press release companies, paying them to get our articles featured and stuff. But this employee, Sam, said, hey, Newswire is for sale. I think you should buy this. I looked at it and told him, I do not need to buy another company. I don't need to buy another job. I don't need more work. I was working between 80 to 110 hours a week at the time. So I had absolutely no time to build another company or to buy and take over another company. But Sam said, I really think you should do this. I think it's a great idea. I would love to help grow the company. I said, okay, so if we buy this, and it was coming time, tax season was coming up, where I had to spend a bunch of money or lose it, just pay it to the government. So Sam had this idea, so we bought Newswire, and the Newswire Magazine did not exist at the time. It was strictly a press release company. So we bought it and started completely revamping from the ground up in 2018 before artificial intelligence was commonly used. But we started using all types of, all kinds of AI, building out our own custom software. Sam was a huge guy doing the work for me. And then Susan Thar, my developer out of India. But as we built it, it kept growing and growing. And I finally flew out for an event with a bunch of celebrities in Hollywood Hills, California. Got out there and realized during a conversation with so they're talking to this rock star, just a sharp old guy. I mean, actually a rock star, but we're talking there and I realized, okay, we're doing all of the hard work, curating the best content, coming up with all the news stories and stuff, being sent out as press releases. And then the magazines mostly magazines were the ones that were really profitable. And they weren't having to find the stories. It was just, they get press releases submitted to them. They choose which ones to publish, and then they're making a ton of money off the publication. So as we were talking there, I was going, I need to figure out how to add a magazine to Newswire, because right now we're doing all the work for not much profit. So like I said, I think that was 2017 that we launched, maybe 2018, we launched Newswire Magazine. But I wanted to have a focus with Newswire Magazine on helping entrepreneurs, authors, motivational speakers, podcast hosts, different leaders who are crushing in life and business. I want to be able to have them share their stories and help them build their brand without charging some crazy fee. And then I didn't want to have like I said, a lot of magazines have, I don't know if you looked at many online magazines, but a lot of them have a paywall. So they'll have the first paragraph of an article that you can read. And then if you want to continue reading, you have to sign up for a subscription to be able to see the article. But we made ours to where it was, when somebody pays to be featured, we distribute that via social media, RSS feeds, all kinds of different stuff to get massive distribution. So that people aren't having to be, having to subscribe to be able to read the article.
That's interesting. So since you are owner of a news company, what do you think? What is the most important issue facing the news industry today?
So the company, our magazine is not focused on news. Newswire was the press release company that I bought. We added Newswire Magazine as a way to feature, like I said, authors, entrepreneurs, podcast hosts, motivational speakers, to help them build their brand. So if you you can actually check it out yourself if you go to news-wire.com/magazine, and that's got all the articles and stuff. But our magazine is not about news. It's about helping share inspirational, uplifting, motivational stories. Be something we need to feature you in as you're building your podcast and getting interviewing these inspiring leaders.
I hope one day I will be featured on your magazine.
Sounds good. We'll have to talk about it.
Yep.
Yeah, so the name does throw you off a bit, being called Newswire, but Newswire is the company people recognize that's been around since 1997.
Yeah. So that's why you kept that name, because of the brand.
Yeah, there's massive exposure, massive brand, just credibility having the brand name there. So
Yep. So, Mr. Cortez, what do you think? What are the key elements to start a successful startup in this AI era?
So that's another great question, Sri. One of the things, I'll start out by saying what used to be extremely difficult when I was young. When I started my first few businesses, I would go to the library. You'd have to go to a library, check out a paperback book, or sit there in the library and write it. I'd have a photocopies. It would cost you, a certain, whatever the amount was per page to copy a book. So I'd bring a notebook and a pencil or pen or pencil and sit there and read these books on whatever type of businesses I wanted to start. And then you had to read the book and write down your notes, handwritten notes, if you couldn't afford to make the paper copies of it.
Mm.
So gaining knowledge used to be extremely difficult. I mean, it was even 20 years ago that you didn't have as much access to Google and these different things.
Yep.
Right now, anybody in the world, anywhere you're at, you can get on. You could learn how to build a rocket. Do if you want to compete with Elon Musk. You can get on and watch YouTube videos. You can listen to audiobooks. Okay, you want to start personal branding. You want to learn how to design websites, whatever it is. You can get on and listen to an audiobook. You can search Facebook. You can search Instagram, YouTube, whatever. There's always different free access. And when you look at it, I've got a couple of iPhones here in my hand, but you've got the sum of all human knowledge in your pocket. The only thing, if it was 40 years ago, 30 years ago, and you couldn't figure something out, it was because you could not figure out where to find the correct paperback book on it. Now you get on, you ask, hey Siri, what's this? What's the answer to this question? You Google something and figure out building software, anything you want to do. You've got the sum of all human knowledge in your pocket. So if you can't figure something out now, it's your fault.
Absolutely. You just mentioned that we have all the human knowledge in our pockets. This is the luxury we have today. In the past, people could not even imagine that this kind of technology would exist in the future, let alone have it. Especially since the arrival of the ChatGPT, it feels like we are living in a dream. It's too good to be true to have been born and experience this kind of technology that surrounds us today.
Well, even going back just a few years, you talk about 2018 when we were using artificial intelligence. I spent an ungodly amount of time and money. I mean, unbelievable to have ridiculously less access, less features in AI. And we were building out our own custom stuff for our retail stores. We built our own custom point of sale software that integrated, so it was accessed on the internet. Each of our retail stores in different locations could log on, and the inventory would be adjusted per purchase. So if somebody logged in, bought a phone here that was coming from the main area, it would pull that from the inventory on all three of the store computers. I mean, even just a few years ago, that kind of stuff was cutting edge technology. That artificial intelligence we were using, nobody else had access to. And so to be able to get on now, and I don't know what I pay for the premium ChatGPT access now. And I've got the API, whatever the credentials are. But I will spend less in the next 10 years on ChatGPT than we would spend in a week trying to figure out how to make something happen with our own custom AI. So again, it's just the amount of knowledge that's available to anybody on earth now is absolutely unbelievable, just compared to a couple of years ago.
Since we are talking about the large language model, I mean the model like the Llama from the Meta, from the Facebook, you can completely spin it into your own server and use it as just like the ChatGPT. And sometimes it is as good as the GPT-4, the paid version of the ChatGPT.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, Mr. Curtis, what do you think? What are the most common mistakes do the new entrepreneurs often make?
I would say not being dedicated to a certain business or certain project. Any idea that you have, you can make almost anything a success. Now, some of it may take way too much work, but I'd say there are two problems. The first one that people run into is they call it in the United States, they call it shiny object syndrome, meaning, okay, today I'm starting a business where I'm going to do articles on ChatGPT, and something else new comes out. Hey, I'm going to sell courses. Hey, I'm going to, and pretty soon they've got 25 different projects that they're doing just a little bit on, and none of them are successful. And so they're wasting too much time on too many different projects, not becoming an expert in any one of them. And so they become, pretty soon you go, like, I'm spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars a month on all these different programs, different projects, different spaces, whatever the project is. And none of them are making enough money to pay for themselves. I suck at entrepreneurship. Maybe I need to go back and get a job. So I would say getting distracted. And the other thing is, because knowledge, everything is so easily accessible now, people underestimate the value of putting in the work. So with Best Cellular, we had, like I said, I was working 80 to 110 hours a week. Just unbelievable. I had no life outside of business, but it was a massive success. We had 250,000 customers monthly hitting our website because we were putting in the work, and I did nothing else besides eat, sleep, breathe, live best seller of my phone company. I hated it, but that's what I did 100% of my time. And it was successful because I put in the work. So I would say that too many people get distracted and look for the easy buck, look for the easy dollar, and don't realize that there are a million ways you could go out and make money. You just have to focus on one and make it work.
Yep. There is a million ways to make more money. Easy money is the trap.
Yep. I love that. That's a good soundbite. Easy money is a trap.
Yeah. Since we are talking about the entrepreneurship, while researching this podcast, I came across to know that you have written so many books about the business and the leadership. One of the book of yours that's called How to Be a Successful Think Like a Leader. It is in fact popular here in India also. So can you share about your story behind writing this book and the premise of that book?
Yeah, that was a crazy one. So that's actually the fourth book that I published, but it's the first book I wrote. So I was diagnosed. You'll hear sometimes I stumble over my words and stuff. I was diagnosed with a malignant glioblastoma brain tumor and given a maximum of 90 days to live in 2010. That's 14 years ago now. I woke up out of a coma. I couldn't communicate. I was having 7 to 10 seizures every week. And basically the doctor, I woke up, I had been in a coma for a couple of days. I woke up and an oncologist, cancer doctor was in there, put his hand on my mom's shoulder. And I woke up as he was telling her that I had 0 chance of survival and I would be dead in less than 90 days. So my mom and stepdad took me to Tijuana, Mexico, out of the United States for treatment that was illegal here. And, cured the brain cancer. But so as I survived past that, I lost absolutely everything. Lost my house, I was not able to drive anymore. I had a brand new motorcycle that I couldn't ride. I basically could not, and I couldn't remember where I was at. So if I say I went to the grocery store, if I rode a bus to the grocery store and then I had to walk back home, there's no way I could have got back home because I had no sense of direction anymore. So I started, as I survived past the 90 days, we went to Mexico, got illegal treatment, and then...
You just mentioned illegal treatment. What is that?
So in the United States, they cannot cure cancer. They'll do cancer treatments. It's kind of a weird deal, but people go to Tijuana, Mexico, to the Hoxie Biomedical Clinic for treatment that's outlawed in the United States. So they did the treatment to me. I was saved, cured of cancer, but like I said, still had some issues with the communication and those kind of things.
I can only imagine how tough things must have been for you. We're dealing with this stuff, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, everybody goes through tough stuff. It's just whether we decide to focus on it or not. But so I went to Tijuana, got the treatment, survived. Obviously, it's 14 years later now, so I didn't die within 90 days. But I was still having a lot of medical problems, and we didn't think that I was going to make it. We thought I was going to be dead pretty soon. But I started reaching out to entrepreneurs that I respected, like Nathan Schulhoff, the guy that invented the MP3 player, all kinds of different successful leaders in the book that I interviewed. And I was planning on basically writing the book as a coffee table book, for my mom to be able to remember me by after I died. So I was just reaching out to these leaders going, what's the worst thing they can say? They could say no, but ended up contacting a lot of leaders that were really inspirational, cool people. And I asked them their insights on how to be successful, how to think like a leader. And I asked them all the same group of questions, kind of like a podcast, but asking them how to be successful, how to become a leader, asking these questions, and then turned it into a really cool book that now is sold in every country. Walmart, Barnes and Noble, all the major retailers are selling it. It's even in the Library of Congress in the United States Library of Congress. So kind of a cool thing, but yeah, I wrote the book originally not thinking that I would ever get out there. It was just I want to interview some cool people so my mom could remember me after I died.
Yeah. I mean, what you have gone through has made you come out like a warrior, I would say.
Appreciate it. There's a thing, I get invited on podcasts, radio, TV shows, whatever, all the time, and people want to focus on the negative stuff. I grew up in my dad was not a good guy, very abusive. At one point handed me a .357 pistol. He'd been beating on me for hours, handed me a .357 loaded handgun pistol, and told me to do the world a favor. He said, "You're a waste of skin, you're a waste of oxygen." Put the gun on the counter and told me to do the world a favor, meaning he wanted me to commit suicide.
Oh, man.
It's all people ask about those kind of things a lot, whether it's the brain cancer or the abusive dad or the diabetes, whatever the problem is. But what I typically tell people is everybody in the world goes through problems and struggles, and whether it was child abuse or sexual abuse or they've lost a business or they had a husband or wife cheat on them. Maybe their parents died at a young age. Everybody goes through these crazy, terrible things. I mean, life has some hard spots. Everybody goes through bad stuff, but winners decide to use those struggles as a reason to become better. Losers use them as an excuse to become, to stay a loser.
Yeah, that's so nice of you to putting it like this. I mean, this shows that the humbleness you have towards the life.
Appreciate that.
If you are comfortable, I want to ask you something related to that period of your time when you discovered that you had the cancer. Can we talk about that? So, what was your first reaction when you got to know that you had the cancer?
So, I knew that something was wrong for almost a year. I was, like I said, had all these different businesses I was running. I was sponsoring events at the Denver Coliseum. So in India, the Denver Coliseum probably doesn't mean anything to you, but it's a big event center where there was MMA fights. Do you guys have MMA in India?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It's so popular here in India. Yeah.
Okay.
Just like WWE. Yeah. Oh, you were sponsoring it. Yeah.
Yeah, so my company is sponsoring MMA fights, bodybuilding shows, all kinds of different athletic events at the Denver Coliseum, and just had all this crazy stuff going on. But then, kept having the seizures and stuff, and it just got worse and worse and worse until one day I woke up in the hospital and didn't know what had happened for months before because I'd been in a coma. But I mean, it was an ongoing thing. But when I came out of the coma, I was thinking, and I'm hearing the doctor saying, you're going to die. You're not going to last 90 days. I actually prayed. I was praying to God saying, I hope you'll please just take me out. Let me get struck by lightning. Let me get hit by a car walking across the street. Something where it's quick and my mom didn't have to see me spending months dying of cancer. It's kind of a bad way to die, dying of brain cancer. But obviously God didn't listen to me telling him how to kill me, how to end my life. So,
when it was that you discovered that you had the cancer?
That was 2010 when I was diagnosed.
Sure.
Swedish Medical Center in Denver, Colorado.
So, Mr. Curtis, how has this cancer experience, changed your outlook on life and your business?
Not that I want anybody else to go through it, but it was a good thing to see that we could die at any minute. I mean, you could go to bed tonight and never wake up again.
Yeah.
So make sure that you're living every moment as if it were your last moment. Make sure you're talking to people in a way that they remember you in a good way. When I go to the grocery store, if I go get a cup of coffee, every conversation I have, I'm trying to make sure that if that's the last time that person sees me, that you're going, man, he changed my life. He made me feel good. He made me whatever, instead of getting mad about somebody messing up your coffee and throwing a fit where you're the jerk that just ruined their day. The guy that leaves a positive impact, like you are, Sri, with this podcast. You're interviewing motivational, inspirational people. So you're changing the world in a positive way as well.
Thank you. It's a compliment for me. As you said that we have to look the world positively. We have to think that our life is, absolutely. Our life it is not guaranteed, right? What will happen to us the very next moment. So you were just rightly said that we will never know that once we sleep today, whether we will wake up tomorrow or not. So what advice would you give to others who are facing the similar challenges as you did?
So I would say, everybody's challenges are different, like we talked about before. Probably not a lot of people are going through, the lack of self-worth, lack of, feeling like you're a loser because your dad told you to kill yourself. There's a lot of people with messed up parents and stuff, but I'd say whatever you're dealing with, realize that it's not the end unless it is. And if it is the end, hopefully you're living a good life, you're saved, you're following Jesus, and you know where you're going. But I guess the problems that you're dealing with now, unless you die from that specific problem, it's not the end of the world. It's not the last thing it's going to. The stuff that you're worrying about today is not probably going to matter 5 years from now.
Yeah. So coming back to the entrepreneur question, As for you, what role does networking play in business development?
So just like being a guest on your podcast today, the more contacts that you can make, the more friends that you can make. With me and you being friends now, when somebody reaches out, they're going, "Hey, I'm trying to get on a good podcast. I'm trying to get my name out there. What's a great, what's a great podcast that I should get connected with, or who should I be interviewed with?" I said, "Hey, you need to join the Billion Insights with Sri. It's an incredible show. Every connection you make opens the door for more opportunities." I would just say, just keep making connections, and that's a huge way to help just gives you opportunities.
Yep. So, Mr. Curtis, what is the main message you hope to convey through your books or through your speeches or through your podcast?
I don't have an individual specific message. I try to, for example, when I speak, a lot of speakers have what they call a pocket speech, meaning they've given the same speech 500 times at 500 different events,
Hmm.
and it gets better every time, but it's the same message, it's the same speech, and they're just kind of fine tuning how to deliver that one specific message. I speak at events on leadership, personal branding. I speak a lot of them on personal branding, overcoming adversity, all kinds of different stuff. I got paid by Keller Williams Real Estate Company more money than I used to make in a month to speak for 30 minutes.
Hmm.
I'm not a realtor or a real estate expert, but being able to tailor your message and give that individual message to each person based on what they need to hear, I think is extremely important.
So, sir, we are on the last segment of our podcast. This segment we call is Instant Insight. I will fire off some quick question to you, and you have to respond as fast as you can.
Okay?
So, Mr. Curtis, are you ready?
Sure.
Best way to start the day?
Best way to start the day is get up, pray. If you don't believe in God right now, I would say start studying, start reading the Bible, but get up and connect and say give God a list of things that you're thankful for.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee, absolutely.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Beach or mountains?
I said both on that. I'm not going to let you make me choose.
City or countryside?
And that's a tough one too. So my parents have horses. I enjoy the country, but I also enjoy the city, being able to get out and connect. And I love going to speaking different events, large events across the country. So I would say both on that as well.
Blue or green?
Blue.
Most used app on your phone?
Probably Instagram or Facebook.
Early bird or night owl?
Night owl.
Introvert or extrovert?
Extrovert.
Fame or money?
Fame, because when you have fame, you can generate money.
What is your go-to stress relief method?
So I really enjoy going to the gym. I have not been recently. You can see I'm getting old and fat. You get back to the gym, just recovering from surgery. But yeah, good workout, anything to get your heart rate up. Listen to some good music, get pumped, lift some heavy weight. Good stress reliever.
Yep. Best way to spend a weekend?
Best way to spend a weekend. I used to say that was working. I was absolutely workaholic. That is all I did all the time. Now I would say I've got a girlfriend that's got a 7-year-old son, and I'm looking forward to getting married to her in the future. But now the reason I don't schedule podcasts and stuff on the weekend a lot is because I'm trying to spend every minute I can with the family.
That's interesting. I mean, everybody should, I would say, because all we do the hard work because of our family, right? So yeah.
Yeah.
If you could change 3 things about the world, what would it be?
I would get rid of the confusion that we've got right now. Especially the American government has so much to do, so many ways that they want to keep citizens. For example, putting fluoride in the water is proven that makes people more docile, easier to control. So I would get rid of the confusion, everything with this gender identity, all the craziness going on there. That'd be the first one. Get rid of confusion. Get rid of intentionally where the media is controlling the population by keeping people confused and divided. And it's 3 things that I would change about the world, or that I would get rid of.
Whichever you want.
I would get rid of a lot of the a lot of the government programs that are outsourced, that are charging taxpayers, United States taxpayers. I don't know a lot about the other places in the world, but I know in the United States, a lot of our money is taken away from us in order to pay for things that we as citizens would not approve of, but we're forced to pay taxes to subsidize these programs. I'd get rid of confusion, get rid of a lot of the major taxes, and I guess probably the most important thing was if I could put a sign on a billboard, every billboard, every time you open your phone, I would want people to be able to look at that and realize that they're important, that they're loved, that their life matters, that they're changing. Every person every person alive. If you're listening to this show right now and wondering what your value is or why you were here, why you woke up today, realize you were created for a reason. And I would love for every person to be able to just automatically know what that purpose is they have in their life.
That's interesting. Travel back in time or forward in time?
I would say I would go forward in time by about 60 seconds. I'm happy where I'm at in life, so if I could see 60 seconds in the future, it'd be cool to know what people were thinking or how they're going to respond to me saying something.
If you could have any dinner guest, dead or alive, who would it be?
I would love to. There's quite a few of the biblical figures I'd love to talk to. I'd love to talk to Jesus. I'd love to talk to Saul. Quite a few of them. They would all be older, like people from years and years ago. The wisest man in history is in the Bible. I'd love to talk to some of those guys.
According to you, what is the best way to celebrate success?
The best way to celebrate success, I would say, is actually celebrate it. Whatever you do, whether it's a little reward. One of the massive mistakes that I made as an entrepreneur was always, every time I hit a new goal, I would automatically increase the goal and didn't reward myself for those little successes. I would say if you're getting started right now, say, okay, listen, if I do whatever your goal is for the day, hit the goal, do some type of a reward, whether that's a walk, whether it's listening to a podcast, whether it's listening to your favorite song, do whatever you want to do. But I'd say whatever you choose to celebrate success, don't skip it once you get there.
No matter it's a big or small, you have to celebrate. That's a fantastic way to look at this thing. Yep. What's the best gift you have ever received?
So instead of a gift, I'll tell you about something that my mom did when I was a kid that I would highly recommend for parents, especially of young kids. My mom, as we were a young kid, one of the ways that she got me to love knowledge and love learning, that's the reason that I'm in the position that I am now, is we did not receive an allowance like a lot of American kids do, just getting paid to exist. I would never give a kid allowance, but she would pay us. She'd let us choose. We had our household chores that had to be done daily, but then also if we wanted to go above and beyond and go out and wash the car or go whatever the extra job was, we could make money by doing more work. So we had our household chores. You don't do your chores, you get in big trouble. You do them and you don't do anything extra. You don't make any money. You're allowed to live in the house and you're allowed to eat food that night. But one of the biggest things that she did was we could make money by going out and working, or we could also earn money by reading books. So she'd have different, as a kid, most 13, 14-year-old kids aren't reading success books or leadership books or entrepreneurship books, but she'd put money in the back of each of these books. And so if I read through like How to Influence and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, maybe that was a $20 book. So if I wanted to take my time, I could go do manual labor, go rake the yard, go, do some hard labor out in the sun, or I could also sit down and read a book. And the more difficult it was, the more important of a book it was to read, the more money that I'd earned from reading the book. So she taught us to love knowledge, love learning, and also understand that everything that you learn has the ability to make you more money.
Just to clear, I just have a little doubt here. So she will pay you when you were young, if you completed a book. This is what you said.
Yeah. And so we learned, for example, reading How to Influence and Influence People by Dale Carnegie, or Rich Dad, Poor Dad, or Who Moved My Cheese. These different books that typically kids would not be interested in reading.
That's really interesting. I mean, by reading those books and she let you go outside and be independent and work, I can see that through this way you must have learned your first entrepreneur lesson, right?
Yeah, so what I learned from that is I could go outside and I could work all day sweating, dirty, wake up, be sore and beat up.
Yeah.
and I could make a little bit of money. Or I could maybe do that during the day, and then at night, instead of sitting there watching TV, if I'm
Yeah.
reading a book on leadership or something,
Yep. Yep.
I can
Yep.
make money then, and then in the
Sense.
future, I'll make money again on it.
That's great. I mean, she allowed you to utilize your time for good things. Also, I can see that you must have learned the value of money through this way.
Yep.
I mean, hats off to her. I think all the young parents who watch us this far to take a note and adopt this in their lives. This is the valuable lesson we should teach children at the early age.
Yeah.
This is why I have this rapid fire round, the instant insights round, because this way we can extract so many insights which otherwise not possible to get from a normal conversation, you know?
That's a great idea. I love the rapid fire questions.
Yeah. Though it's not that rapid, but nonetheless, it is insightful. So since you have a vast experience of your entrepreneur journey and all, so what do you think? What are the things that you like to learn?
There is so much. I am not an expert. I mean, I would say everything that you do, every single day, there's something you could learn more about or learn to do better. But
Yeah.
the biggest thing that I would recommend is you need to know enough about enough different things that you can hire good employees to do that job better than you can. But you need to know enough about it to know if they're doing the right job and if you're paying them a reasonable amount for the work that they're doing.
Yep. That is precisely the definition of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, you don't have to be an expert in everything, but you do have to know
Yeah.
enough about enough things to be able to make money.
Yeah. That's a
That's
great
mine.
line. So who inspired you the most?
My mom was a huge inspiration to me. She went through, growing up with my dad, she went through a lot of different struggles, but she's always had a good positive outlook. She's always been an inspirational person and had the strength to do things that were uncomfortable. And, she started a business when I was a young kid,
Yep.
just always pushing herself and always
Yep.
striving to become better than she was at the time.
What's your favorite book?
That would be How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie.
It's a very famous.
I've probably read that
Yeah.
13, 14 separate times. I've got a copy that is absolutely shredded. It's got all kinds of different highlighters and pens and pencil and different underlines and pages folded. And a great book.
Favorite movie?
The Pursuit of Happiness.
Fantastic movie. Yeah. Most challenging part of your job?
The most challenging part of my job would be when I interview somebody on Amazon Fire TV or put them in Newswire Magazine. It is just like hosting a podcast. It is unbelievable. There's an unbelievable amount of time. So if you and I do an article, do an interview, it's going to take me a couple of weeks of work to go through, get that all edited, get the cover done correctly, get the video interview edited properly for Amazon TV.
Yeah.
So the editing and figuring out the parts to cut out is probably the biggest thing. There's so many good things in an interview, and it's hard to figure out which. You got to curate that down. If you're going to keep somebody's attention, the most difficult part is figuring out the parts to keep, and then which parts are good but not good enough to be included in the actual article or TV interview.
Yeah. The most rewarding part of your job?
The most rewarding part, I absolutely love highlighting, like I said, authors, entrepreneurs, motivational speakers, podcast hosts. I love interviewing leaders who are doing an incredible job with their business, who are changing the world, and be able to share their story. So many of the people that I interview are already making a lot of money. They're already doing a great job helping a lot of people. But my job is making them famous, making them well known. So I love that, being able to share good people. And then I also get to cut out if somebody is dishonest or crooked, or I learn a lot about people during these interviews. And so sometimes people have the money to spend on the personal branding, but they're not a good person, or they're ripping people off or whatever it is. I'll refund their money. Tell them, listen, we're not doing business. This is not something I'm willing to help you promote. So I love that I get to make good people famous.
That's interesting. So one last question. What is the best piece of advice that you ever received?
Don't take yourself too seriously. That's it. We all think that we're more important. Like we all think that other people are thinking of us. Like for example, to dance, as a kid in school, every one of us are so afraid to get up and dance because we think everybody else is looking at us and we're worried what everybody else is going to think. But everybody else is thinking the same thing. They're all worried about what everybody else is thinking about them. And the truth is, nobody's thinking a whole lot about you. It's typically us worried about whatever everybody else is thinking. But if you just get out there and do it, get out there, do the scary thing, it's almost always going to pay off.
That's a great advice. Thanks for sharing that with us today. One thing I must say that here in India, it is like 11 a.m. morning, but in your time, it is a late night, but still you are so active during this time. I must applaud for that, sir.
I'm excited to be on your show. I'm really excited. You said I'm your 25th guest, right?
Yep.
Very cool. It's my honor to be on your show.
Thank you. It's an absolute pleasure to having you in our show.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate you, Sri.
So, Mr. Curtis, that's the end of the podcast. Any final thought?
Man, I would say take chances. Go out there, take risks, take chances. Do the thing that you're afraid to do. It will almost always be worth it. You will never, ever meet somebody on their deathbed that says, well, I wish I wouldn't have taken that risk. I wish I wouldn't have gone out there. I wish I wouldn't have gone on video. Everybody when you talk to somebody who's dying, they're always regretting the chances that they regret the chances that they didn't take or the opportunities that they missed. Yep. Nobody regrets taking a chance.
Great advice. Thanks for sharing that.
Hey, this is M. Curtis McCoy. If you're on YouTube, please subscribe to Shree's podcast, The Billion Insights. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please take a moment and rate us 5 stars if you enjoyed our conversation. Yep. Appreciate you guys.
Thank you, Mr. Curtis. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your inspiring journey and valuable insight with us.
Appreciate you, Sri. Thanks for having me on the show. That was great.
Thank you, sir. Your resilience and dedication to helping others and truly remarkable, I would say.
Brother, I appreciate you.
Thank you for taking the time and doing this podcast with us.
Thanks so much.
And our listeners, make sure to check out Mr. Curtis' work, such as his books, his podcasts. All the link can be found in the description. See you next time on the Billion Insight podcast. Until next time, dream big and work hard. This is Sri, your host, signing out. Peace.